The bailiff's palm slammed the courtroom door hard enough to rattle the brass plate, and the sound knifed down the hallway like a warning meant for everyone who thought they could leave without consequences. Elijah Reyes tightened both hands around a cracked game controller in his lap, thumbs hovering over dead buttons, as if plastic could keep his body from betraying him. The left wheel of his chair squeaked when he shifted. That squeak always announced him. It always invited eyes. It always made him feel like a thing rolling into a room built for people who walked. Behind him, Marisol Reyes stood with one hand on the chair's push handles and the other shoved deep into her coat pocket, fingers clenched around nothing and everything at once. She smelled like rain, stale cigarettes, and a sweetness that did not belong in a courthouse. The gum in her mouth had been chewed into a tasteless wad, but it could not erase the night she kept trying to forget. Beside them, Denise Park held a thick binder against her ribs like a shield. Her posture was calm, the way a bridge looked calm in a storm. Denise had learned early that visible fear made predators bolder. Her firm was small, underfunded, and already one sanction away from collapsing. Every motion she made had weight. Down the corridor, a man moved with quiet gravity. Tailored charcoal suit, silver tie bar, watch face catching fluorescent light like a cold coin. People stepped aside without thinking, as if his presence rewrote the air. He walked as if corridors were built to part for him. Grant Harlow, founder and largest shareholder of Harlow Memorial Hospital, crossed into the building where his institution's past was about to be spoken aloud. He did not know the boy, gripping the cracked controller outside the courtroom door, was the same voice that had kept him alive at night. He did not know the teenager-turned-woman behind that wheelchair had been a child when his hospital made its mistake and then married it under delays. He did not know that in less than an hour, one sentence would connect the man he was in daylight to the man he became after midnight. The bailiff pulled the door open. Cold air rushed out with the smell of old carpet, burnt coffee, and paper that had absorbed too many lies. Elijah rolled forward, jaw clenched, eyes fixed on a spot above the judge's bench, like he could stare through wood and law and leave his anger on the other side. Marisol followed, shoulders stiff. Denise stepped in beside them, scanning faces, measuring dangers, already hearing the judge's warnings before they came. At the defense table, Grant Harlow lifted his eyes for the first time and saw the wheelchair first. He saw the boy's hands on a battered controller. He saw the mother's clenched mouth. He saw the attorney who looked like she had spent a decade being underestimated and decided it would not happen again. Grant's expression stayed controlled. He had mastered the art of looking unreadable in boardrooms and funerals, in press conferences and shareholder meetings. But something in Elijah's posture, something feral and furious and unbroken, tugged at Grant's chest for the length of a blink. Then the judge entered. The clerk read the case number, the names, the date, stamped into the record like a brand. 9 years. 9 years of continuances and motions and paper shields. 9 years of a boy's body being used as an argument while the adults negotiated time like it was harmless. The judge looked over her glasses. Counsel will proceed. Denise stood, smoothed the front of her blazer, and stepped into the open space where truth either lived or died. This is not a story about bad luck, Denise said, voice steady. This is a story about a preventable error, a cover-up, and a child forced to carry the consequences while an institution buried the truth under delay. At the defense table, Martin Pell, lead counsel for the hospital, leaned toward Grant with a low whisper about optics and strategy. Beside Martin sat Calvin Rusk, head of risk management with a calm face and eyes that did not flinch. Calvin's suit was too expensive for a hospital employee. His smile was too small to be kindness. Martin rose for the defense, voice smooth as polished marble. The plaintiff's circumstances were tragic, he began. Tragedy is not negligence. The hospital acted in an emergency with limited information. Marisol's mouth twitched. Elijah's fingers tightened on the cracked controller until the plastic creaked. The first witness was called, and the story began to move both backward and forward, as if the courtroom itself had become the hinge of a door that never stopped swinging. Denise began with a question that did not need decoration. Miss Reyes, Denise said gently. Your age at the time of delivery. Marisol's throat tightened. She walked to the stand on legs that still remembered cold sidewalks and hunger. She raised her hand, swore to tell the truth, and sat in the chair that made her feel smaller than she was. 15, she said. Denise nodded. Housing status at that time. Marisol's eyes flicked toward Elijah and away again. Shame rose like heat. Homeless. The word landed hard. It did not feel like a detail. It felt like a sentence. Denise's questions were careful, but the answers pulled Marisol into memory anyway. A diner that was too warm and smelled like grease. A waitress staring like Marisol was a stain. Pain hitting Marisol's spine, so suddenly her breath turned into animal sounds. Knees buckling on tile. A paramedic's face tightening at the sight of a child in labor. Bright ambulance lights washing everything into white. Harlow Memorial's sliding doors swallowing her in disinfectant and judgment. A nurse asking for identification. A nurse asking for insurance. Marisol's blank stare, because those words belonged to people with parents. A resident's sigh at no prenatal care. A senior nurse's clipped voice about moving this along. A medication dose decided too fast. A weight not confirmed. A monitor screaming when the baby's heart began to drop. A room turning into a storm. Marisol's hands gripping the sheets. A mask pressed to her face. Her lungs fighting. One thin cry, brief as a match flare, and then silence. Back in court, Denise's voice pulled her forward. After birth, Denise said, medical outcome communicated. Marisol swallowed. They said complications. Denise nodded. Diagnosis received? Marisol's mouth trembled. Cerebral palsy. Grant's fingertips pressed together under the table. Cerebral palsy was a phrase he had seen on philanthropic brochures, on hospital gala speeches, on board slides that made disability look like a charity opportunity. It did not belong in a mother's mouth like a wound, yet here it was. Denise continued. Ability to access consistent therapy, equipment, specialized schooling. Marisol's laugh was hollow. No. Denise let the word breathe. Legal action filed. Marisol's eyes hardened. Yes. Denise's voice stayed steady. Duration of resistance. Marisol stared straight ahead. 9 years. The defense began their cross, and the poison came in polite drops. Alcohol use. Employment instability. Home instability. The defense tried to turn the jury's gaze away from a hospital record and onto a woman's shame. Marisol's jaw clenched so tight her cheek muscles twitched. The judge's eyes sharpened. Counsel will keep the line relevant. Martin nodded with practiced humility, but Calvin's faint smile did not fade. Calvin believed in a philosophy that looked like morality when spoken softly. Institutions served thousands. Liability threatened care. Sacrifices were necessary for the greater good. People like Marisol and Elijah were regrettable outcomes, acceptable losses in a system designed to protect itself. Denise fought to keep the case where it belonged, in the record, in the timeline. In the moment when medicine turned into negligence, the judge called a recess. In the hallway, Denise crouched beside Elijah's chair, eyes level with his. Breathing steady, Denise said quietly. Hands loose. Elijah's mouth tightened. I am fine. Denise did not argue. She had learned a long time ago that some kids survived by refusing softness. Your presence matters, she said. Sitting in that chair in that room matters. Elijah's fingers tapped the cracked controller once, a nervous rhythm. They talk like I do not exist. Denise's gaze softened. They do. That ends when you speak. Elijah looked away, jaw tight, fear disguised as anger. Across the corridor, Grant checked his phone without meaning to. He told himself it was habit. It was not. It was hunger. A familiar icon sat waiting. Stone Harbor, Grant's online name. Chosen the night grief became unbearable. He opened the chat, saw no new messages, and felt a sharp emptiness he immediately resented in himself. He shoved the phone back into his pocket like it had embarrassed him. In the corner, Elijah pulled out his own phone, the cracked screen reflecting fluorescent light. A message waited. Stone Harbor, arena tonight. Elijah's mouth twitched, not quite a smile, but something close. Quick comment. Court. Stone Harbor. Still breathing. Elijah stared at the words, throat tight, and typed. Quick comment. Still here. Stone Harbor. Good. No vanishing. Elijah's thumbs paused. He hated the way those words did something to his chest. He typed anyway. Quick comment. Dramatic. Stone Harbor. Accurate. Elijah did not know Stone Harbor was Grant Harlow. Grant did not yet know Quick comment was Elijah Reyes. Neither knew the irony was already tightening around them like wire. The trial resumed, and Denise began threading the first needle, proving error, proving harm, proving the effort to hide. A pediatric neurologist explained oxygen deprivation, hypoxic injury, spastic cerebral palsy, and how minutes mattered when fetal distress screamed from a monitor. The defense returned to prenatal care as if it was a magic eraser. Denise stayed calm and cut back to the record. An early injustice landed outside the courtroom because Elijah's life did not wait for verdicts. After court, Denise drove Marisol and Elijah back to their building, the one with the broken elevator and the stairwell that smelled like wet concrete and old food. The landlord's lobby had a security door that buzzed too slowly, forcing Marisol to stand there with Elijah's chair and feel everyone's gaze like heat. When they reached their floor, bright orange paper was taped to their door. Marisol stared at it, blinking like her eyes were failing. Elijah's stomach tightened because he recognized countdowns. Marisol ripped it down, unfolded it with shaking hands, and went pale. Elijah's voice came out hard. Eviction. Marisol's mouth trembled. 10 days. 10 days was not just a number. It was a cliff. Elijah's throat tightened. We cannot. Marisol's hands shook. They cannot do this during trial. Elijah's voice stayed flat. They can. Marisol's breath hitched, shame and rage flooding. Her gaze darted to the kitchen drawer where she kept the small bottles she told herself were for emergencies. This was an emergency. Her body already remembered how to numb. Elijah saw her eyes flick. He said nothing at first. Then he said, low and lethal, leaving tonight ends everything. Marisol froze. The words hit like a slap and a plea at once. Marisol's jaw clenched. You do not control me. Elijah's eyes burned. I am not controlling. I am surviving. Marisol's shoulders shook. She turned away abruptly, slammed the drawer shut without opening it, and grabbed her coat. Elijah watched her, heart pounding, knowing patterns the way kids learned weather. Marisol paused with her hand on the knob, body trembling, and she left anyway. The apartment swallowed the sound of her footsteps. Elijah stared at the orange paper on the table until his vision blurred. He rolled into his room, shut the door, and put on his headset. The glow of his laptop turned his face ghost-white. Citadel Siege loaded. Quick comment appeared in the lobby. Stone Harbor's icon lit green almost immediately. Stone Harbor. Early. Quick comment. Eviction. Stone Harbor. 10 days. Elijah froze. His fingers hovered over the keys. Quick comment. Knowing things. Stone Harbor. Patterns. Quick comment. My mother left. Stone Harbor. Drinking. Elijah's throat tightened. He hated that Stone Harbor understood. He hated that it felt like comfort. Quick comment. I hate her. Stone Harbor. Hate the situation. Quick comment. Same. Stone Harbor. Not same. Elijah swallowed, anger and loneliness tangling. The match began, and Elijah threw himself into it like fighting in pixels could keep him from drowning in real life. Across the city, Grant sat alone in his glass house overlooking Lake Michigan. The lake was dark and flat, like a sheet pulled over something dead. The house was quiet enough to hear the refrigerator hum. Sophie's old stuffed rabbit still sat on a shelf where Grant could not bring himself to move it. Grant stared at the chat. Eviction. 10 days. Grant felt a sharp urge to solve it with money, because money had always been his tool for moving reality. His fingers hovered over his phone. He could send a gift card. He could hire someone. He could make it vanish. Then he stopped, because for the first time, the idea of help without truth felt like another kind of cover-up. Grant typed, Stone Harbor. Show up tomorrow. Quick comment. People show up when they want to watch me lose. Stone Harbor. Not me. Elijah did not respond. He played harder, jaw clenched, while Grant fought alongside him, heart tight, not knowing he was fighting beside a child, the hospital he owned and harmed. Morning came too fast. Marisol returned before dawn, hair damp, eyes glassy, shame clinging to her skin. She moved through the apartment quietly, like she hoped silence could erase what she had done. Elijah pretended to sleep, because looking at her would force him to feel something softer than anger. And softer emotions hurt more. In court, Denise's pressure increased. The judge's patience was thin. Denise's firm could not afford mistakes. A warning had already been issued about speculative lines. One more misstep could mean evidence struck, exhibits excluded, sanctions imposed. Denise carried her own ticking clock. Her firm's operating account sat on the edge of empty. Expert witnesses cost more than Denise could safely pay. Grants ran out. Donors had limits. The hospital's legal team knew this. They could bleed her dry and call it strategy. Denise called a delivery nurse, Joanne Mercer, and the room changed. Joanne's shoulders were stiff, eyes tight, as if she had been bracing for this moment for 9 years. Denise asked about fetal distress. Joanne hesitated. There was a delay. Denise's voice stayed soft, dangerous in its calm. Charting performed. Joanne's answer sounded like a lie she wished was true. Denise pivoted. Witness contact pre-testimony. Joanne swallowed hard. Someone called. Hospital counsel. They said to keep it simple. A murmur rolled through the courtroom. The judge's face tightened. Any further witness contact will be addressed. Understood. The defense nodded. Denise nodded. Calvin Rusk did not nod. He watched as if the judge's words were just another variable to manage. In chambers, the judge warned both sides. Publicly, she warned Denise again. One more line that looked like theatrics, and the court's patience would snap. Denise walked back to her table with her jaw clenched, feeling the squeeze from above and below at once. The day ended with a subtle reversal that felt like a trap being set. Joanne stepped down, eyes wet, and left the courthouse with her shoulders hunched. Outside, Calvin Rusk's assistant brushed past her too close, whispering something Denise could not hear. Denise saw Joanne flinch. Denise felt her stomach turn. The next day, the first real backfire hit. Joanne returned to the stand, and under defense questioning her story softened. Language changed, became unclear. Pressure became preparation. Delay became chaos. Denise watched Joanne's eyes flick toward the back of the courtroom, where a hospital security officer stood too still. Denise rose, ready to push. The judge's voice cut like ice. Counsel will refrain from turning this into theater. Denise's blood went cold. The judge was close to threatening mistrial. A mistrial would reset the clock and crush Marisol and Elijah under another year of waiting. A mistrial would be a victory for the hospital disguised as procedure. Denise swallowed her anger and stepped back, because sometimes the smartest move was surviving the judge. In the hallway, Marisol paced, hands shaking. They got to her, Marisol whispered, voice trembling with rage. Denise's eyes were sharp. Pressure happened. Proof is needed. Marisol's laugh was bitter. Proof. Everything needs proof. My son needs proof to be believed. Elijah rolled a few feet away, staring at the wall, pretending he did not hear. Because hearing adults talk about him like he was evidence made his chest feel like it was collapsing. Denise knelt beside Elijah again. The line stays tight, she murmured. No mistrial. No chaos. Elijah's jaw clenched. So they win. Denise's eyes held his. No, not if the evidence exists. At the defense table, Grant watched Joanne recant and felt a cold unease settle into his bones. Martin Pell leaned close. This is stabilizing, Martin whispered. The nurse is cleaning up. Grant's eyes narrowed. Cleaning up. Martin's voice stayed smooth, reducing confusion. Grant's gaze flicked to Calvin Rusk. Calvin's expression remained calm, like a man watching weather he had ordered. Grant's stomach turned. He did not like the feeling, and he did not yet know why it felt personal. That night, Elijah logged in with his shoulders tight and his chest burning. Quick comment. They made her change. Stone Harbor. Pressure. Quick comment. Welcome. Stone Harbor. Not medicine. Quick comment. My life. Stone Harbor. 10 days. Elijah's throat tightened. Quick comment. 2 weeks. Stone Harbor. 2 weeks. Elijah froze. He had not said 2 weeks. Quick comment. Knowing things again. Stone Harbor. Listening. Elijah's fingers trembled. Quick comment. Pain gets worse. Doctor said window. Stone Harbor. Window. Elijah swallowed hard. Window was the word the doctor used for his hips tightening, for pain becoming permanent, for surgery becoming harder. The doctor had said the next set of injections mattered. Insurance had denied it again. Denise had promised to fight. Fighting took time they did not have. Elijah typed. Quick comment. People say better like magic. Stone Harbor. Better costs. Elijah stared at the words until his eyes burned. He did not know the man typing those words was the man who owned the hospital. He only knew the words felt true. The next day, Denise pulled a new thread that forced the courtroom to sit up. Malik Johnson, a former IT contractor, took the stand. Malik's posture was wary, eyes scanning the room like he expected something to strike. Denise kept her questions tight. Audit trails existed. Administrative access could delete. The Reyes chart showed anomalies. The defense objected repeatedly. The judge's face tightened. Counsel will proceed with precision. Denise nodded, and her voice stayed calm as a scalpel. Malik admitted he had been told to disable tracking features during adverse event reviews. Denise asked who instructed him. Malik's eyes flicked toward Calvin Rusk. Risk management. The room murmured. The judge's gavel tapped. Martin Pell's face tightened. Calvin's expression stayed flat, because Calvin had always believed fear was a tool, not a sin. Outside, Denise's phone buzzed with an unknown number during a short break. Denise answered, voice controlled. A man's voice, smooth and cold, spoke. Board counsel. The case can settle quietly, generously. Denise's gaze sharpened. Formal channels exist. The voice softened into threat. One sanction and the little firm collapses. Judges dislike chaos. Denise's stomach tightened. They were trying to squeeze her where she was weakest. Funding, reputation, court patience. Denise ended the call and stared at her screen, heart pounding. She did not show fear. She walked back into court and stayed sharp. Denise's pressure was not just legal now. It was survival. That evening, the external crisis arrived on schedule, because life did not pause for trials. Marisol received a call from Elijah's school. The principal's voice was tight, rehearsed. Elijah's presence was becoming a disruption, a risk. An incident had occurred. A student had pushed Elijah's chair. Elijah had swung his arm in reflex, hitting the kid's chest. The kid's parents were threatening to escalate. The principal used words like policy and safety. Marisol heard one word, removal. The school wanted Elijah out. Marisol's breath came shallow. She could not afford another fight. She could not afford a specialized placement yet. She could not afford anything. She hung up and stared at Elijah in the living room, headset on, eyes locked on his screen. He looked older than 9. He looked like a soldier who never got to rest. Marisol's hands shook. Her fingers moved toward the drawer without permission. Elijah glanced at her, eyes narrowing. Marisol froze. Elijah's voice came out flat. Choosing bottle. Marisol flinched as if hit. Do not talk to me. Elijah's eyes burned. Talk does not change. Showing up changes. Marisol's throat tightened. Shame burned. Rage rose. She wanted to scream that she had been 15, that she never asked for this, that she had lost her childhood and her future and her sleep. But Elijah had lost his walking. Elijah had lost his peace. Elijah had lost his right to be a kid. Marisol's shoulders shook. She slammed the drawer shut again without opening it and grabbed her coat. Elijah's jaw clenched. Leaving ends everything. Marisol's mouth trembled. She stood there shaking, craving and fear wrestling inside her. Then she did something she had not done in years. She sat down. She put her head in her hands. She whispered into the silence, voice cracking, I do not know how to do this. Elijah stared at her, anger tight in his chest, because part of him wanted to hate her weakness. Part of him recognized it. He stayed silent, because silence was safer than hope. Denise called that night, because Denise never stopped. Denise's voice was tight. School escalation noted in the record. This becomes a custody credibility risk if it becomes a narrative of instability. Marisol swallowed hard. I cannot fix everything. Denise's tone softened. Fixing is not required. Accountability is. Marisol's breath hitched. Denise continued. Elijah made a statement in court that concerned me. The safety plan begins now. Counseling, school counselor coordination, daily check-in structure. Elijah's jaw clenched at the word structure. Structure sounded like adults deciding for him again. Denise spoke to Elijah directly, voice calm. You stay alive. That is the priority. That is not negotiable. Elijah's mouth tightened. He did not respond. Denise did not demand words. Denise knew that sometimes survival happened without consent, and later, you learned gratitude. That night, in a community mental health clinic that smelled like bleach and tired hope, a counselor named Miss Alvarez spoke to Elijah with a voice that did not pity him. Elijah answered in short sentences. Sleep was bad. Anger was constant. Thoughts got dark at night, not Miss Alvarez placed a paper plan in front of him. Names, numbers, steps. Denise signed her part. Marisol signed with shaking hands. Elijah stared at the plan like it was a leash, then like it was a net. Miss Alvarez's voice stayed steady. This is not punishment. This is protection. Elijah's jaw clenched. He hated needing protection. He also knew he had been drowning. Back in court, the trial pressure cooker tightened. Denise kept threading evidence into admissibility, careful with the judge's warnings. The defense fought with objections and tone. Calvin Rusk's philosophy became clearer as he whispered to Martin Pell with cool confidence. The hospital had to be protected. The system had to survive. Individual suffering was regrettable, but necessary. Grant watched Calvin and felt a slow disgust building. Then the board counterattack came for Grant. Grant received a message from Reena Patel, compliance director. Reena's voice on the phone was crisp and low. Internal review began quietly 2 weeks ago. Anomalies exist. Logs, access timestamps, missing audit trails, deletions consistent with administrative manipulation, evidence not admissible yet without subpoena. Grant's chest tightened. 2 weeks. Reena's voice stayed calm. Your shift in tone was audible. I moved quietly. Court does not create evidence. Court makes it admissible. Grant's jaw clenched. He liked Reena's precision. He hated the implication. Someone under his roof had been doing this for years. Reena continued. Board awareness is rising. A move to remove you is in motion. They fear you. Grant's mouth tightened. Fear. Reena's tone sharpened. Fear of truth, not fear of you. Grant stared at the courthouse wall, cold stone under his palm, and felt something he had not felt in a long time. Purpose. Not the hollow purpose of building wealth, the hard purpose of paying a price. Secure what you can, Grant said quietly. Reena's voice softened just slightly. That choice costs identity. Double quotes. Grant's breath hitched. Identity already died. He ended the call and walked back into court with his face controlled and his heart burning. That night, Elijah logged in, exhausted. He did not want comfort from Stone Harbor. He wanted rage. He wanted clarity. Stone Harbor, still here. Quick comment, still here. Stone Harbor, left bridge always. Elijah's throat tightened. That phrase had become ritual. Quick comment, they trying to kick me out school. Stone Harbor, removal. Quick comment, yeah. Stone Harbor, you survive it. Elijah's fingers trembled. Quick comment, better not magic. Stone Harbor, better costs. Elijah stared. He typed something he had never typed before. Quick comment, if someone hurt you and pretended to be your friend, you destroy them. Stone Harbor, rage understandable. Quick comment, destroy. Stone Harbor, truth first, rage after. Elijah's jaw clenched. He did not like the answer. He did not know the answer was the most honest thing Grant could offer without confessing who he was. The next day, Denise called Elijah as a witness. The courtroom shifted. A child in a wheelchair speaking truth made adults uncomfortable because it forced them to see what they had been abstracting. Denise guided him carefully. Pain, therapy denied. Eviction notice. School bullying. A boy stealing Elijah's hat. and throwing it on the floor. A girl filming Elijah struggling up a ramp and posting it online. A teacher telling Elijah to ignore them the way people told storms to stop. Denise's voice stayed calm. Safe place. Elijah's jaw tightened. Online. Denise nodded. Friendship. Elijah hesitated. One friend. Denise's eyes softened. Help. Elijah swallowed hard. He makes me stay. The room went quiet. Grant's chest tightened. He did not know why the words felt like a hook under his ribs. A defense cross began, aiming to puncture the online lifeline. Online friends were not real. Kids exaggerated. Home instability created emotional issues. Elijah's anger rose like fire. He stopped himself because Denise had told him, no chaos, no mistrial, no giving the judge a reason to reset the clock. Elijah's voice came out tight and controlled. Online friend shows up. The defense pressed. Elijah's fingers tightened on the chair's armrests. Then he said the sentence that changed everything later without anyone realizing it yet. Left bridge always, Elijah said, voice flat. That is what he says. Because losing that lane collapses everything. Grant went still. Left bridge always, not just a strategy call. A ritual phrase Grant had said in matches, over and over, because Quick Comet had panicked once, and Grant had anchored him with something repeatable. Grant's lungs tightened. He stared at Elijah's face. He listened to the cadence. He heard the dry restraint in the boy's voice that felt eerily familiar. Grant did not stand. He did not flinch. He did not show it. But inside, something cracked open. The day ended with another reversal because the machine fought back. Arthur Baines, a former administrator Denise planned to call, did not show. His phone went to voicemail. Denise's stomach turned cold. Marisol's hands shook. They got to him. Denise's jaw clenched. Not proven. The judge's eyes narrowed. Schedule moves forward. No delays. The judge's patience was ablaze now. She had one more mistrial threat in her voice like ice. Denise's options narrowed. In the hallway, Denise received a text from an unknown number. Stop, or the witness disappears. Denise stared at the message, heart pounding. She could bring it to the judge and risk being accused of theatrics again. She could stay silent and risk losing witnesses. Denise made a choice. She filed a motion for protective order enforcement and an inquiry into witness intimidation. She did it in writing, with evidence attached, with no drama. Precision. The judge's face hardened as she read. Any further intimidation results in contempt. The defense protested. The judge shut it down, but she also warned Denise again. One more speculative leap and sanctions follow. Denise nodded, jaw clenched. The rope was tight. That night, Marisol's relapse nearly happened in public. A reporter ambushed them outside the courthouse, shoving a microphone toward Marisol's mouth. The reporter's voice was bright with cruelty. Mother of disabled child seeks payout after homeless teen pregnancy. Marisol's face went white. Elijah's jaw clenched, humiliation burning. Marisol felt the familiar urge to numb, to disappear, to drink until the reporter's face vanished. She saw a liquor store across the street, neon glowing like permission. Her feet moved without thought. Denise caught her sleeve. Marisol, Denise said low and firm. Marisol's breath came shallow. I cannot. Denise's eyes held hers. Not here. Not now. Marisol's shoulders shook. Elijah watched, heart pounding, rage rising. He hated being the reason adults had to restrain themselves. He hated being the trigger. Denise leaned in, voice sharp, hands open. Marisol's hands trembled. She opened her fist. A tiny bottle rolled into Denise's palm. Marisol had carried it into court like a grenade. Denise closed her hand around it and shoved it into her own pocket. Staying, Denise said. Marisol's eyes filled. I hate myself. Denise's voice stayed calm. Hate later. Stay now. Marisol nodded, shaking. She turned away from the liquor store and toward Elijah, toward the wheelchair, toward the life she kept trying to escape. Elijah stared at her, chest tight, and felt a small, unfamiliar sensation. His mother had not disappeared. That did not fix everything, but it was different. Inside the courthouse, Grant watched the scene from a distance. He saw Denise take the bottle. He saw Marisol's shoulders shake. He saw Elijah's face harden like stone. Grant's throat tighten. He had spent years believing people did not stay. He was watching someone stay. That night, Elijah did not want to log in. His anger at the hospital was now tangled with anger at himself for trusting Stone Harbor. He stared at the headset in his hands, like it was a weapon pointed inward. His phone buzzed. Stone Harbor, still here. Elijah's fingers trembled. He typed, "Quick comment. Stop texting. Stone Harbor. Okay." Elijah stared at the short response, surprised by the lack of push. And another message came. Stone Harbor, left bridge always. Elijah's throat tightened painfully. He threw the phone onto the bed and covered his face with his hands, silent tears burning behind clenched eyes. The next morning, the board hit Grant like a hammer. Martin Pell's face was pale when he approached Grant in the courthouse hallway. Board meeting happened? Emergency vote. You are removed as chairman effective immediately. Grant's jaw clenched. Effective. Martin's voice tightened. You are compromising defense strategy. Your attendance is making the jury watch you. Grant's eyes narrowed. They should watch. Martin swallowed. You cannot direct counsel now. You cannot control appeal. The board will decide. Grant's mouth hardened. Control. Calvin Rusk stepped in with a faint smile. Chairman's status was always temporary. Calvin murmured. Risk is permanent. Grant's eyes cut to him. You believe you are permanent. Calvin's smile sharpened. I believe the institution must survive sentiment. Grant stared at him, seeing the true antagonist clearly now. Calvin was not a cartoon villain. Calvin was a system with a human face. Calvin believed he was doing good by doing harm efficiently. Grant's hands clenched under his coat. Truth survives, Grant said quietly. Calvin's eyes went cold. Truth is a luxury. Double quotes. Grant walked into the courtroom anyway. Denise felt the air shift the moment Grant entered. The jury watched him. The judge watched him. The defense watched him with a nervous edge. Denise's next witness was Malik again, tightening the chain. Then Elijah's body betrayed him. Mid-afternoon, pain spiked into a spasm so sharp Elijah's breath caught. His hips locked. His legs tightened. His back arched. He tried to hide it, jaw clenched, eyes hard, because weakness in public felt like blood in water. Denise noticed first. Marisol saw Elijah's face go pale and panicked. Denise rose. Medical issue present? Recess needed. The judge granted it, concern cutting through irritation. Marisol leaned close, trembling. I am here, she whispered, voice cracking. I am here. Elijah's breath came ragged. Do not. Marisol's hands shook as she tried to adjust him, but she did not know how. She looked helpless, and Elijah hated it, because helpless was what they always were. Grant stood from the defense table. Martin grabbed his sleeve. Grant pulled free. Grant walked around the table, not fast, not dramatic, stopping several feet away, hands visible. Denise's eyes snapped up, wary. Grant's voice was low. Proper positioning reduces spasm. Pain relief guidance needed. Clinical consult now. Marisol's eyes flashed. No touching. Grant nodded once. No touching. He looked at Denise. Direct line available for pediatric physiatry consultation. Not leverage. Not tied. Provided now or never. Denise's jaw clenched. Distrust fighting with urgency. She nodded once. Number. Grant handed a plain card. No branding. Then he stepped back immediately, giving space. The jury had watched the hospital owner stand up in the middle of his own defense and move toward the child, not to intimidate, but to respond to pain. Calvin Rusk watched too, eyes narrowing, because control was slipping. When the recess ended, the judge addressed both parties. Courtroom is not a theater. This remains a medical malpractice case. Any personal theatrics end now. Her eyes held Denise's for a second. Warning. Denise nodded. Then the judge's eyes flicked to Grant. Mr. Harlow is not counsel. Namar. Harlow remained seated. Grant nodded. The line was drawn. That night, Denise coordinated medical advice and emergency pain management planning through Miss Alvarez and the on-call physician Grant's card provided. Not a miracle. Not an instant fix. A plan. A net. Denise also coordinated with a nonprofit to delay eviction beyond 10 days. 30 days approved, contingent on proof and paperwork. Time bought, not safety guaranteed. Elijah stared at the 30-day extension like it was a thin piece of paper trying to hold back an ocean. He logged into Citadel Siege anyway, not because he wanted to, but because habit was how he survived. Stone Harbor was there. Stone Harbor, pain worse. Quick comment. Stop listening. Stone Harbor. Listening anyway. Elijah's throat tightened. He typed something sharp. Quick comment. Hospital guy ruined everything. Stone Harbor. Hospital guy hid. Elijah froze. He had not said hid. Quick comment. Knowing Stone Harbor. Patterns. Elijah's fingers trembled. Quick comment. If I meet him. Stone Harbor. Rage. Elijah's jaw clenched. Quick comment. Destroy. Stone Harbor. Truth first. Elijah hated the answer. He hated that it sounded like the only way out. The next day, the discovery became less convenient and more inevitable because Denise forced it to be earned. Reena Patel's work did not appear overnight. It appeared because the court's protective order and Denise's subpoenas finally cracked the door that had been sealed for years. Denise subpoenaed internal access logs. The judge allowed it because the intimidation evidence and recantation pattern created cause. The hospital fought. The board tried to block. Denise argued for admissibility with precision. The judge granted limited scope. Reena's findings came into court not as a magic email, but as a stack of logs, chain of custody documented, and an affidavit written in crisp language that could survive cross. The evidence showed repeated after-hours access to the Rayos chart by one account, Calvin Rusk's account. Calvin's face stayed calm as the exhibit was displayed. Denise did not smile. She did not celebrate. She did not give the judge any reason to call her theatrical. She simply kept going. Then Denise did something dangerous. She called Grant Harlow as a witness. The defense objected loudly. The judge's eyes narrowed. Counsel's list did not include. Denise's voice was steady. New admissible evidence includes internal conduct tied to leadership and governance. Mr. Harlow is uniquely positioned to explain oversight failures and board interference. The judge stared. Denise did not blink. The judge sighed like a woman who hated mess and could not avoid it. Witness will be heard. Counsel will remain controlled. Grant took the stand. He raised his hand. He swore to tell the truth, and it felt like stepping into a fire he had avoided for years. Denise began with basics. Chairman's status removed. Compliance inquiry begun weeks earlier. Board interference now active. Denise's questions tightened. Awareness of audit anomalies. Grant's voice was steady. Yes. Identification of account access tied to risk management leadership. Grant's gaze flicked toward Calvin. Yes. Delay strategy applied to reduce liability exposure. Grant swallowed hard. Yes. The courtroom went quiet. Martin Pell looked like he had swallowed glass. Calvin's eyes went cold. Denise's voice stayed low. Reason. Grant did not make a speech. He did not perform redemption. He said the truth that hurt. I built a system that rewarded hiding, Grant said. I did not order every act. I allowed the culture that made acts like this possible. That is responsibility. The defense tried to cross him into emotional instability. Grief, loneliness, compromise. Grant did not deny grief. He did not deny loneliness. He did not deny compromise. He held steady. Then Martin tried to force a personal connection question. Personal relationship exists with plaintiff or child. Grant's throat tightened. Elijah stared at him from the plaintiff's table, face hard, eyes burning. Grant could shatter Elijah with one sentence. Grant chose protection. No personal relationship exists in the real world, Grant said. Awareness of human impact has increased through attendance. It was not the whole truth. It was the truth that did not harm the child. Denise watched Grant carefully. Denise understood what Grant had just done. Not confession. Shield. The day ended with another reversal. The judge, irritated by the growing chaos, threatened sanctions again. One more insinuation without foundation, she said to Denise, voice like ice. And exhibits are struck. Denise nodded, jaw clenched. The judge was not on Denise's side. The judge was on the court's side. Denise had to survive the court to win. That evening, the identity collision happened in a way that did not rely on a perfect phone screen. It happened through language. Grant sat alone in his house, staring at the chat with quick comment. He did not log in to play. He went straight to the message window and typed a coded line, a confirmation that only one person would answer correctly. Stone Harbor, lane saved when map burns. Minutes passed. Quick comment, left bridge always. Grant's lungs tightened. The phrase came back like a hammer. Grant closed his eyes, and the courtroom scene replayed. Elijah's flat voice. Left bridge always. Grant's chest felt like it was splitting. He did not want it to be true, because true meant he was both comfort and villain. True meant he had been telling a child to stay alive while his institution's lawyers tried to starve that child of care. True meant he had been hiding behind his name. Grant stood abruptly and walked through his dark house, as if moving could stop guilt from pooling. It did not. The next day, Grant met Elijah in the courthouse hallway. Not with reporters, not with cameras, not with drama. A quiet side corridor with a window looking out at falling snow. Elijah sat near the glass, headset around his neck like armor, staring at the white world outside like it belonged to someone else. Grant approached slowly, hands visible, keeping distance. Elijah looked up, eyes narrowing instantly. Grant said Elijah's name softly. Elijah's jaw tightened. Knowing name ... double quotes, Grant swallowed. Heard. Elijah's eyes hardened. Hospital guy. Grant did not deny. Yes. Elijah's hands clenched. Go. Grant's throat tightened. Cannot. Elijah's voice rose, sharp, cracking with fury. 9 years of going. Grant flinched. Elijah leaned forward in his chair, breath hard. You do not talk to me. Grant's voice came out rough. Right. Elijah's eyes burned. Sorry does nothing. Grant nodded once, shame heavy. Agreed. Grant's gaze flicked to the headset. Elijah's body stiffened protectively. Grant's voice dropped to a whisper. Left bridge always. Elijah froze. His eyes widened. His breath caught. The hallway tilted. The world snapped into a shape Elijah did not want. Elijah's voice came out thin. No. Grant's throat tightened. Stone Harbor. Elijah stared at him like he was seeing a monster wearing a familiar voice. Anger flooded. Betrayal burned. Elijah's hands shook on the armrests. Elijah's voice rose, low and lethal. You ruined my body. Grant swallowed hard. Elijah's voice cracked. You ruined my mother. Grant's eyes shone, but he did not let tears fall. I did not know it was you, Grant said. I did not read the file. I let the machine run. Elijah's laugh was sharp, broken. Let machine run ... double quotes. Grant's voice tightened. Confession. Elijah's eyes burned. Friend at night. Enemy in court. Double quotes. Grant's breath hitched. Truth. Elijah's jaw clenched. No friend. Grant nodded, pain flashing. Understood. Elijah's throat tightened. You were only good thing at night. Grant's chest tightened like a fist. You kept me alive, Grant whispered. Elijah's eyes widened, confusion and rage colliding. Grant did not reach out. He did not touch. He did not ask forgiveness. He did not ask for anything. He only said, voice low, debt exists. Price paid. Elijah stared, shaking, and whispered one word. Go. Grant nodded once and stepped back. No vanishing, Grant whispered, voice breaking slightly. Not for you. Then he turned and walked away. Elijah sat shaking, silent tears sliding down his cheeks. He wiped them hard with his sleeve, furious at his own body for betraying him again. Marisol approached, eyes narrowed. Talking happened. Elijah's voice went flat. Nothing. Marisol's gaze sharpened. Lying. Elijah's jaw clenched. Leave. Denise appeared, face tight. Court resumes. Elijah rolled toward the courtroom door, like rolling toward war. Inside, the trial entered its final stretch. Calvin Rusk took the stand. Calvin spoke smoothly about institutional survival, about protecting care for thousands, about liability threats, about greater good. Denise listened without interrupting, letting Calvin build the scaffold for his own downfall. Then Denise showed the logs, access timestamps, deleted audit trails, internal ticket requests. Calvin tried to pivot, calming language, clarifying records, standard practice. Denise's voice stayed soft and lethal. Greater good does not include a child's pain. Calvin's eyes went cold. Regrettable outcomes happen. Denise nodded slowly. Regrettable. Convenient. The jury watched Calvin's calm face and saw what it was. A system with a heartbeat. The judge ordered preservation of records. A formal inquiry was initiated by state regulators based on admissible evidence and intimidation concerns. Not an instant indictment, not a montage. A slow machine turning. The defense pushed for mistrial again. The judge refused, but her voice carried a warning. Court remains controlled. Denise kept control by force of will. Outside court, Elijah's life did not wait. The school called again. A formal hearing was scheduled. Elijah's placement was at risk. Denise attended the hearing with Mary Saul because Denise knew credibility mattered. The principal spoke about safety. A parent spoke about fear. A bully's mother cried fake tears. Elijah sat in his chair, hands clenched, and listened to adults discuss him like he was a hazard. Then Elijah spoke. His voice was flat, controlled, and full of steel. Chair got pushed. Body did what it does. Hands swing when scared. People think chair equals joke. The room went quiet. Elijah continued. School says inclusive. Inclusive means not letting kids touch chair like toy. The principal shifted. Elijah's eyes stayed hard. People film me. People call me glitch. Teacher says ignore. Ignoring means permission. Silence held. The hearing ended with a temporary decision. Elijah stayed, but with a warning. One more incident and removal would be reconsidered. Another ticking clock added to the pile. Denise drove them home afterward, jaw clenched, already planning specialized school applications and funding strategies that did not rely on miracles. Denise also delivered the line she needed them to hear. Life is not waiting for verdict, Denise said. Survival is happening now. Marisol stared out the window, hands trembling. Elijah stared at his cracked controller. That night, the first major payoff hit, and the story asked the audience to commit to what came next. Elijah logged in and saw Stone Harbor waiting. Elijah's chest tightened. He did not want to hear the voice that had betrayed him. He also did not want that voice to disappear. Stone Harbor, still here. Elijah's fingers trembled. Quick comment, you are him. Stone Harbor, yes. Quick comment, no friend. Stone Harbor, understood. Quick comment, you lied. Stone Harbor, I hid. Elijah's jaw clenched. Quick comment, I hate you. Stone Harbor, aloud. Elijah's breath hitched. Quick comment, you kept me alive and ruined me. Stone Harbor, truth. Elijah stared at the word truth until his eyes burned. Stone Harbor typed again, slower. Stone Harbor, I pay in daylight. No buying forgiveness. No asking, only paying. Elijah's throat tightened. If the viewer is still here, it is because this was never just a lawsuit story. Subscribe, because what Grant does next costs him more than money. The next days became a pressure cooker with rotating threats. Episode A had already landed with discovery backfire and the judge's mistrial edge. Episode B kept escalating with personal collapse risk. Episode C surged with board counterattack. The board filed an emergency motion to restrict internal access, claiming compliance material was privileged and Grant's inquiry was improper. Reena Patel risked her career securing evidence under whistleblower protections, placing copies with external counsel in sealed custody. It was not magic. It was procedure. It was slow. It was dangerous. The board also launched a smear strategy. A local news piece aired footage of Marisol stumbling on courthouse steps years earlier, framing her as unstable. It did not mention she was a teenager when the case began. It did not mention the 9-year delay. Marisol watched the segment and felt shame flood her body like poison. Elijah watched too, jaw clenched. Marisol's craving rose hard. Her hands shook. She sat in her car outside the liquor store, gripping the steering wheel so tight her fingers hurt. She stared at the neon sign like it was a voice calling her name. Then she saw Elijah's tournament flyer on the passenger seat, a new program Denise had found at a community center for adaptive gaming. Elijah had pretended not to care about it, but he had kept it. Marisol's breath hitched. She drove away from the liquor store with tears on her face, not because she was healed, but because she was choosing not to disappear. She walked into her first group therapy meeting that night and sat in a circle of folding chairs under harsh fluorescent light. The room smelled like coffee and cigarettes and hard truth. When it was her turn, Marisol tried to blame the hospital. The words came hot and fast. A counselor named Janine listened, then cut through the noise with one sentence. "The hospital harmed your child," Janine said. "That truth stands. Your harm to him stands too." Marisol's face went white. Janine's voice stayed steady. Impact over intention, accountability over excuse. Marisol's throat tightened. Rage rose. Shame burned. Marisol wanted to run. She stayed. That night, Marisol knocked on Elijah's door. Elijah opened it with his headset around his neck, eyes wary, already bracing. Marisol's voice shook, speaking truth. Elijah's jaw clenched. Truth. Marisol swallowed hard and forced herself to say the words that made her feel like she was swallowing glass. "I blamed you for my pain," Marisol whispered. "That was wrong. You were a baby. I said things that made you feel like a burden. That was abuse. I hid behind stress and the hospital and my own rage. I stop hiding now." Elijah went still. The word abuse landed heavy. Elijah's throat tightened painfully. He did not forgive her. Forgiveness was not a light switch. But he heard the difference between a soft apology and a hard confession. Marisol's shoulders shook. "I keep showing up," she whispered, "even when you hate me." Elijah's jaw clenched. "Showing up is minimum." Marisol nodded, tears sliding. "Minimum is better than vanishing." Elijah did not respond. He stepped back, leaving his door open instead of slamming it. A small allowance. A crack. In court, the trial moved toward verdict. Denise's closing argument was sharp, not preachy. A teenage girl in labor. A monitor screaming. A delay that cost oxygen. A chart manipulated to reduce liability. A 9-year delay strategy. A child denied care while paper moved. Denise spoke about the cracked controller as a symbol, not because it was cute, because it was the only stable object Elijah had been able to hold on to while everything else shifted. The defense spoke about complexity and emergency medicine. The jury watched Calvin Rusk's calm face and felt the cold in it. Deliberations began. Hours passed. Marisol sat with shaking hands. Elijah stared at the clock. 2 weeks until his orthopedic consult. 30 days until eviction extension ended. School hearing warning still active. Every clock ticked. Grant sat alone on a bench in the hallway, no longer surrounded by lawyers. The board had removed him. The defense had become a machine without him. His phone buzzed with messages from executives he ignored. Grant stared at the floor and thought about Claire and Sophie. Grant's wife had died in a black ice pileup on a night that felt like the universe snapping. His daughter's stuffed rabbit had been handed to him in a plastic bag. Grant had learned that money could not reverse time. After that, he had moved into a glass house and become a ghost. Then he had downloaded Citadel Siege on a night he wanted anything except his own thoughts. He had chosen the name Stone Harbor because it sounded unbreakable. Quick Comet had shown up months later, a small, sharp voice with controlled anger. Grant had told himself it was just a game. Then he had realized it was companionship. Grant looked down at his hands and realized he had spent years telling a child not to vanish without knowing he was telling the child he had harmed. The courtroom door opened. A bailiff called everyone back. The jury filed in. The foreperson stood. The verdict landed. Liability found. Damages awarded. Marisol sobbed, shoulders shaking. Elijah sat still, face tight, because triumph did not erase pain. Triumph did not give him back his legs. Triumph did not make him forget the word glitch. Denise closed her eyes for a second, relief and exhaustion washing through her. Her firm would survive. Her client would survive, not because of luck, because Denise had refused to let the machine win. The defense counsel whispered about appeal. The board's attorneys started to stand, already rehearsing delay. Grant stood from the back row, voice steady. He did not claim full control. He did not pretend he could command the board. He did something more costly. "I direct my vote and my influence," Grant said, loud enough for the courtroom to hear, "toward paying this judgment without delay. If the board chooses appeal solely to prolong harm, I resign from any remaining influence and testify publicly against the appeal and against the strategy of delay." A murmur rippled. The judge's eyes sharpened. The record captured it. Grant's face stayed calm, but inside he felt the price being paid. He would lose more friends. He would lose more control. He would lose the last comforting illusion that his name meant good. The judge adjourned. Outside, cameras swarmed. Denise guided Marisol and Elisha through a side exit because spectacle helped no one. The ending did not sprint into adoption. The ending did not turn into a fantasy where money fixed grief. It turned into logistics because repair required structure. Denise met with trust attorneys. An irrevocable trust was drafted for Elijah's lifetime care. Independent trustees were appointed. A patient advocate role was funded. Housing was secured in an accessible building with a working elevator, wide doors, and ramps that did not feel like apologies. Elijah's injections were scheduled. His orthopedic consult was confirmed. Specialized school placement applications were filed. Wait lists were real. Interim accommodations were funded, and aid, adaptive equipment, transportation. The investigation did not become a neat montage. It became an official inquiry initiated by state regulators and referred to the Attorney General's office for review. Subpoenas arrived slowly. People were placed on leave pending investigation. Evidence was gathered. Charges took time. Calvin Rusk did not go to jail the next morning. Calvin's consequences were coming the way consequences in real life came. Slow, unavoidable. Meanwhile, Marisol entered outpatient treatment, not to become a saint, to become present. There were ugly days. She missed a meeting once and sat in her car crying, convinced she had already failed. She drove to the liquor store and parked. She stared at the neon sign until her eyes burned. Then she called Janine, voice shaking. Janine's voice stayed calm. "Showing up begins again now." Marisol drove away and went to the meeting anyway, late, embarrassed, alive. Elijah began attending sessions with Miss Alvarez, not because he wanted to, but because Denise made it a condition of safety planning. Miss Alvarez did not pity him. She taught him language for anger. She taught him a method for nights when the thoughts got dark. She helped Denise coordinate with the school counselor to reduce isolation. Elijah hated it, and Elijah used it one night, alone, when his chest felt too tight, and he realized he had survived without a game. That mattered. Grant disappeared from headlines. He did not perform redemption on television. He testified when asked. He cooperated with regulators. He stepped away from corporate leadership when the board insisted on spin. He lost influence. He lost the comfort of control. He spent nights in his glass house staring at the lake and feeling the silence differently now. The silence was no longer numb. It was full of voices he could not unhear. He did not message Elijah privately. He did not push. He waited. Months passed. Elijah transferred into a specialized program. The first day, he rolled into the building. The ramp was smooth, the doors were wide, and no one stared like he was an interruption. He met other kids in chairs. He met staff trained in spasticity care and adaptive equipment. He found a gaming club after school with adaptive controllers and kids who spoke trash-like laughter instead of cruelty. A boy in a power chair named Marcus pointed at Elijah's cracked controller and said, "War relic." Elijah's mouth tightened. "Still works," Marcus grinned. "That means you do not quit." Elijah stared, surprised by the respect in the words. Elijah joined the club without smiling, and he came back the next day. A month later, a local adaptive gaming tournament was held in a bright gym with banners and folding chairs, and sunlight that made everything look too honest. Elijah's stomach churned. He had never competed in front of people like this. His body was visible. His chair squeaked. His hands cramped. Marcus rolled beside him and said, "Nervous means care." Elijah's jaw clenched. Care gets stolen, Marcus shrugged. Then steal it back. Elijah sat at the table with his cracked controller beside an adaptive setup. The match began. Elijah's mind narrowed to callouts and timing. The one-place anger became fuel instead of poison. They advanced. They lost a round. Elijah wanted to explode. Marcus tapped the edge of Elijah's controller and said, "Left bridge always." Elijah froze. Marcus grinned. "Heard you say it." Elijah's throat tightened. Elijah did not hear Grant's voice in that phrase now. He heard his own. Elijah made the call. They held. They won. The room erupted. Elijah sat stunned, breath caught, as if he did not understand joy in daylight. A younger kid in a small wheelchair rolled close, eyes wide, staring at Elijah like he was seeing a future. Elijah looked at the kid, looked at the cracked controller, and felt something shift inside his chest. He leaned down slightly and said, voice low and firm, "No quitting." The kid smiled. Elijah did not smile back fully, but his mouth softened. That night, Elijah sat in his new apartment with a framed tournament ribbon on the wall. Marisol sat on the couch with a workbook and a highlighter, sober eyes tired but clear. She had started working part-time at a community center. Not glamorous, but real. For the first time, she finished something she started. Elijah rolled into the living room and stared at the framed ribbon. Marisol's voice was quiet, proud. Elijah's jaw clenched. "Do not make it dramatic," Marisol nodded. "Not dramatic. True." Elijah stayed in the room instead of leaving. A small repair. Denise called that week to update them. Investigation moving, Denise said. Formal inquiry open. Subpoenas issued. Leave decisions made. "This is slow." Marisol's breath hitched. "Slow." Denise's voice stayed firm. "Slow is real." Elijah's mouth tightened. "Calvin." Denise did not offer fantasy. "Calvin's consequences arrive with evidence. Evidence takes time." Elijah hated waiting. Denise continued, voice softer. "Safety plan continues. School counselor continues. Therapy continues." Elijah's jaw clenched. "Fine." Denise's voice held steel. "Staying alive remains the only priority that cannot be negotiated." Marisol swallowed hard. "Still sober." Denise exhaled. "Good." Denise's tone softened. "You both did work. That matters." After the call, Marisol stared at the apartment around her. The working elevator in her memory, like a miracle she had not allowed herself to believe in. She whispered into the quiet, voice trembling, "We are still here." Elijah heard her. He did not respond with softness, but his shoulders loosened. That month, Grant received a notice. A deposition request from regulators. Another hearing. Another day of sitting under oath while attorneys tried to paint him as unstable. Grant went anyway. After the deposition, Grant walked out into cold air and realized he had no one to call. Claire was gone. Sophie was gone. His old friends had been tied to the board. Now the board looked at him like a traitor. Grant returned to his glass house and sat at his desk. He opened Citadel Siege and stared at the login screen without pressing enter. He did not want to pull Elijah back into his life through pixels. He did not want to manipulate grief into companionship. He closed the game, and his phone buzzed. A message from Denise. Elijah requested a structured conversation. Denise present. No private messaging. Grant's chest tightened. Grant typed one word. Agreed. The meeting took place in Denise's office. A small space that smelled like coffee and paper and exhausted persistence. Elijah rolled in with his jaw clenched, eyes hard. Marisol sat beside him, hands clasped, sober. Denise sat across like a guard dog with a law degree. Grant entered without a suit jacket, just a man with tired eyes and a posture that did not pretend. He did not speak first. He waited. Elijah's voice came out flat. "Why hiding?" Grant swallowed. "Cowardice." Elijah's eyes narrowed. "Coward." Grant nodded once. "Yes." Marisol's breath hitched. Denise watched, eyes sharp. Elijah's hands tightened on his wheels. "Friend at night. Enemy by day. Double quotes. Grant's throat tightened. "Yes." Elijah's voice shook slightly, anger and grief mixing. "I do not forgive." Grant nodded. "Understood." Elijah stared at him, eyes burning. "You kept me alive." Grant's voice came out rough. You kept me alive too. Elijah's jaw clenched. Not fair, Grant nodded. Not fair. Denise leaned forward. Boundaries remain, Grant nodded. Agreed. Elijah stared at Grant for a long moment, then said, quieter, no private chats. Grant's throat tightened. Agreed, Elijah continued, voice low and firm. No saving story, no hero. Grant's eyes shone. Agreed. Elijah's mouth tightened. Debt paid with life, not money. Grant swallowed hard. Yes. Denise exhaled slowly, the tension shifting. Marisol watched Grant, still angry, still wary, but seeing something new. Grant was not asking to be loved. Grant was choosing to be accountable. That did not erase the past. It made the future possible. The months turned into a year. The investigation deepened. Calvin Rusk's name surfaced repeatedly in subpoenaed communications. Evidence of manipulation became harder to deny. Charges were filed eventually, not as a fantasy reward, but as a result of procedure. Calvin stood in his own courtroom one day, face controlled, still believing in his philosophy. The judge did not care about his philosophy. Evidence spoke. Consequences arrived, slow, unavoidable. Marisol stayed sober through ugly nights and tempting days. She made amends without demanding forgiveness. She attended parenting classes and listened instead of defending. She apologized again, this time without drama, just truth. Abuse happened. Repair happens. Elijah did not become sweet. Elijah became less alone. He began mentoring the younger kid from the tournament, showing him controller grips, teaching him callouts, telling him survival lines like they were armor. He used the phrase left bridge always like it belonged to him now, because it did. Denise's firm stabilized, not wealthy, not glamorous, alive. Denise continued taking cases that systems wanted to starve. Denise knew she had almost been crushed. She also knew why she did not quit, because kids like Elijah did not have time for everyone else's patience. Grant moved out of his glass house, not into some perfect family fantasy, into a smaller place near the city where silence did not echo like a tomb. He volunteered quietly at a rehabilitation tech nonprofit, listening more than speaking, learning the difference between solving and showing up. One day, Grant tried to solve something anyway, because old habits died hard. Elijah's wheelchair needed adjustments. Grant offered to buy a top-of-the-line model without thinking, tossing money at discomfort like it was a wrench. Elijah looked at him, eyes hard. Money solves chair. Money does not solve respect. Grant froze. Elijah continued, voice flat. Asking me matters. Grant swallowed, shame flashing. Yes. Elijah stared. Learning continues. Grant nodded. Yes, that was the relationship. Not affection demanded. Respect earned. Then, months later, long after the verdict, long after the trust had been structured, long after Marisol had built sobriety into routine, the adoption concept surfaced in a way that did not feel like coercion. It did not happen in a hallway. It did not happen in front of cameras. It did not happen tied to money. Grant raised it first with Denise, not with Marisol. Grant's message was plain. A separate conversation may be considered months from now, only with independent counsel for Marisol, only with therapist support, only if Marisol initiates consent freely, no financial linkage, settlement unchanged regardless. Denise read the message and did not soften. Denise knew how power tried to disguise itself as love. Denise spoke to Grant in her office, voice sharp. This risks backlash. This risks coercion. This risks savior fantasy. Grant nodded once. Understood. Denise's eyes narrowed. Then drop it. Double quotes. Grant's throat tightened. Not pushing. Only offering a framework that protects. Denise's voice stayed cold. Framework begins with independence. Grant nodded. Agreed. Denise arranged independent counsel for Marisol in a separate therapist meeting because consent required safety. Marisol heard the concept and felt a wave of disgust, fear, and longing all at once. She hated the longing most. Being chosen sounded like air. Marisol sat with Janine in therapy and said the quiet truth. Unwanted all life. Wanting choice feels like weakness. Janine's voice stayed steady. Wanting belonging is human. Choosing it safely is strength. Marisol's hands shook. Power imbalance huge. Janine nodded. Boundaries and counsel. Time. No linkage. No rush. Marisol looked at Elijah that night and said the truth without hiding. Offer exists. No pressure. No change to money. Choice later. Elijah's jaw clenched. Buying. Marisol shook her head, voice trembling. Not buying. Not tied. Only if we choose. Elijah stared, anger and suspicion tight. Leaving if control happens. Marisol nodded. Yes. Elijah's voice softened by a hair. Choosing must be ours. Marisol's breath hitched. Yes. Months passed again. Grant never brought it up. He showed up to therapy sessions when invited. He stayed away when not. He continued paying the price in daylight. Testimony, cooperation, loss of influence, reputation bruised, name no longer clean. Then one day, in a quiet office with Marisol's independent attorney present and Janine present, Marisol spoke first. Decision made, Marisol said, voice steady. Not for money, not for rescue, for commitment and accountability. With boundaries. Grant's throat tightened. He nodded once, not triumph, not relief, just gravity. Yes. Elijah attended one session and stated his boundary without softness. No hero, no ownership. Respect only. Grant nodded. Yes. A small family court hearing took place months later, quiet, private, no cameras, no spectacle. The judge reviewed documents. Marisol's independent counsel confirmed consent. Grant confirmed no linkage to settlement. Denise sat in the back, arms crossed, watching for any sign of manipulation. Elijah sat in his chair, posture tight, eyes sharp. The judge approved the adult adoption with the stern reminder that it changed nothing about past wrongdoing and changed nothing about legal obligations tied to the trust. Outside the courthouse, sunlight hit the steps. Marisol squinted like she was relearning daylight. Elijah rolled down a smooth ramp that did not feel like an afterthought. Grant walked beside them, not in front. Elijah looked up at Grant, jaw clenched. Grandfather. Grant's breath hitched. The word carried weight, not because it was sweet, but because it was chosen. Grant nodded once. Yes. Elijah's voice stayed flat. Still no friend at night. Yet, Grant swallowed hard. Understood. Marisol's eyes shone. She whispered, still here. Grant's voice came out quiet. Still here. That night, in the accessible apartment, Marisol sat on the couch with her workbook open, highlighter in hand. A framed tournament ribbon hung on the wall. The orange eviction notice had been replaced by a lease on the fridge held secure by trust structure. Elijah sat at his laptop, cracked controller beside his keyboard, headset in his hands. Grant sat at the kitchen table reading deposition requests, preparing to show up again tomorrow. Elijah put on his headset and logged into Citadel Siege. Stone Harbor appeared online. Elijah's fingers hovered, then moved. He connected. Grant's voice came through. Careful. Here. Elijah's voice was flat. No drama. Grant let out a quiet laugh. No drama. Elijah's jaw clenched. Left bridge always. Grant's voice warmed, steady. Always. Marisol listened from the couch, eyes wet, and heard the two voices that had once been separated by lies, existing in the same room now, under boundaries, under law, under truth. Elijah cued into a match. The digital arena loaded. Elijah leaned forward, fighting, not to escape life, but to live inside it. End screen belongs to the next story, and the next story begins with a billionaire who thinks he can buy silence until the one person he ignored walks into his private elevator, holding a medical bracelet with his company's name on it, and the doors close behind them.